Hey guys, this is your pharmacist Sidra and welcome to another lesson of Pharmacy Tech Study Guide. So whether you work in a pharmacy or any other healthcare setting, you not only need to familiarize yourself with the word HIPAA, but also need to practice it at all times, because if you fail to do so, there could be a lawsuit waiting for you to happen. So what is HIPAA? HIPAA is the acronym for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act that was passed by Congress in 1996, and it's a federal law. This is a privacy law that has certain national standards to protect sensitive patient health information from being disclosed without the patient's consent or knowledge. HIPAA rules are elaborate. In this video, I'm just going to focus mainly on the things that you need to know as a pharmacy tech, because otherwise HIPAA has so many different categories that are beyond the scope of this video. So first of all, you need to understand two important terms in HIPAA. First is that HIPAA protects the patient's private or health information, and we call that information protected health information, or PHI, and the individuals or the entity, or we can say organizations, that are subject to protect PHI are called covered entities. These would be your pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, pharmacies, healthcare providers, healthcare plans, etc. So basically, HIPAA is that the covered entities basically abide by the HIPAA privacy rules in the use and disclosure of the patient protected health information. Now, the privacy rule also contains standards for the patient's rights to understand and control how their health information is used. A major goal for this rule is to make sure that individuals' health information is properly protected while allowing the flow of the health information wherever it's needed, like to provide and promote the high quality healthcare for the patient. Now, you as a pharmacy technician need to understand the right flow of information, otherwise you could be in big trouble. For example, now patient, let's say, sees a primary care doctor but recently actually went to see a dentist. Now, if for some reason dentist calls the pharmacy to ask what medications patient is on, it is within the HIPAA to share that information with the dental office so that the dentist can provide the reasonable or good health to the patient. So basically, you can share the PHI with only those entities who are directly involved in the patient's care. Now, here's where it gets very tricky and confusing. Let's say one of your patient's family members or spouse, or let's say friend, calls the pharmacy and claims that they take care of the patient, and they introduce themselves as a family member, and they actually want to know the patient's protected health information. In this case, my question is, will you share the information? Well, absolutely no. And the reason is that the person who identifies themselves on the phone as a family member or friend, you can't really verify that, right? And what if it's somebody else, right? And if it is somebody else, then you are in big trouble. And we don't want that to happen. So what you can do in this case is that you send the printed copy of PHI to the address on file for the patient, and you just verify the address with the person. Just have them verify the address. Like, don't tell them the address, have them read the address to you or verify the address, and then you can send the information to the address on file. Now, there are situations where the law permits but does not require you as a covered entity to use and disclose the PHI without an individual's authorization. There are some of the common situations that I'll put on the screen for you. First one is, of course, that you can disclose the PHI to the individual. Like if the individual needs information for record keeping, maybe for text filing purposes, or whatever other reason, you can disclose the PHI to the individual if requested. But you must disclose the information to individual only, not to a friend, spouse, or a family member. You can actually check their ID to make sure that it's the individual. You can also disclose the information to anyone involved in the treatment, payment, and healthcare operations. Also, you can provide limited data set for research purpose, for public health, or any other healthcare operations. Now, the rule permits the use and disclosure of PHI without an individual's authorization or permission when it's required by law, right? Like, let's say if somebody committed a felony and a sheriff comes up to you and they show you their note, like there is an official note that grants them permission to look at the PHI, then with that note, you can definitely share the PHI with them without individuals' consent. Again, you can share it when required by law or when it's in public interest, such as for essential government functions. You can also share it for workers' compensation purpose, for research, but that's really under certain conditions. Now, you can also provide PHI to law informants, like I said, when it's required by law, but also to prevent or lessen a serious threat to health or safety of the patient. Now, the question is, what information is protected? Like, what is PHI? Now, any individually identified health information is going to be considered as protected information. This information could be patients' health conditions, patients' allergies, a medication list. It also includes the demographic data that's related to the individual's past, present, or future physical or mental condition, okay? And also any provision of healthcare to the individual in the past or present. Also, any payment that patient has, paid for any treatment they've been provided. Also, any information that can be used to identify individual, for example, patient's name, address, date of birth, patient's social security number. See, at times, pharmacies or healthcare professionals have exceptional workloads due to which they make mistakes when filling the prescription or just updating patient notes. And by enabling patients the access to their health data and requesting any amendment within the data, if it's accurate or incomplete, patients can take full responsibility for their own health. That's why it's important that patients get the access to their own protected health information. All right, moving on. So initially, HIPAA gave patients the right to review their medical records and establish the requirement of patients' consent for the transfer and communication of medical records. Now, it also includes that pharmacist or pharmacy tech must fill a prescription with patient's consent. Now, what that means is that, while working in a pharmacy, let's say you receive a new prescription from a doctor, whether it's verbal, electronic, or whether you receive it via fax, that gives an automatic patient's consent to the pharmacy to fill that prescription. Okay, now once prescription is filled, the patient has full right to refuse to take that prescription or fill it. So if not picked up in approximately 2 weeks, then the pharmacy must return to stock that medication. And if that's done, then it's not fraudulent. Now, if the patient does not pick up the prescription in 2 weeks and it remains on the pharmacy shelf past 2 weeks, it will be considered as pharmacy fraud, because what happens is that the insurance paid for the prescription on the day the pharmacy billed or filled the prescription. But if the patient never received the medication, then it's a fraud, because now the pharmacy has been paid for something that the patient never received. Now, that was in case of new prescription. In terms of refill, according to HIPAA rules, the pharmacy must refill the prescription only after obtaining consent from the patient. Prior to HIPAA, there were fewer controls to safeguard PHI. Data often used to get stolen, and people would commit identity theft and insurance fraud, and that literally affected patients financially, in terms of personal loss, increased insurance premiums, and higher taxes. So, in fact, in late 1980s and early 1990s, healthcare spending per capita increased by more than 10% per year, which is quite a lot. Now, partially due to the controls implemented to comply with HIPAA, this increases in the healthcare spending per capita are less than 5% per year, which is literally half of how it was back in 1990. So indirectly, we can really say that HIPAA has really had a great impact on controlling the financial stability for the patient. Now, what if HIPAA is breached? Now, since it gets very busy in the pharmacy, there are times when patients' protected information is accidentally disclosed. For example, let's say a pharmacist accidentally placed a wrong patient's prescription bottle in patient's bag, or a wrong prescription was sold at the out window. In such cases, according to the breach notification rule, it is a legal requirement for pharmacy to notify patients and let them know that their secured PHI was released or potentially accessed without their authorization. Now, in Walgreens, we call it a HIPAA STARS report. We have to provide details of what PHI is involved and what measures the patient should take to prevent any harm, like, if, let's say, credit card information was released, then cancel the credit card. Also, we have to kind of report that what measures pharmacy will take to prevent this from happening again. Now, the maximum time allowed to report any HIPAA violation event is 60 days. See, by providing this information in a timely manner, patients can protect themselves from becoming the victims of theft and fraud. Now, unless the patient has suffered any physical or financial harm due to unauthorized disclosure of their PHA, they will not be able to bring any civil action against the negligent party, right? However, the covered entities and the business associates who violate HIPAA for, let's say, personal gain, or they are false pretenses or other personal gains, they actually have the criminal penalties imposed upon them by the Department of Justice, and that could actually result in up to 10 years of imprisonment. So this is literally not worth it. And also, normally in pharmacy, all the records are kept for up to a year or maybe maximum 3 years, but HIPAA records are kept for up to 10 years by law. Healthcare providers are now required by law to give patients a notice of their privacy policy. It is necessary to explain HIPAA to the patients now, because we are giving them, because you're asking them to sign a copy, so you have to kind of explain them what HIPAA is and what you are making them sign. You can either give them an electronic copy of the HIPAA to sign, or you can make a physical record of it, but you have to have that HIPAA signed by the patient, and you have to give them a written acknowledgement form of HIPAA. Now, the best way to explain HIPAA to patients is to put the relevant information in the privacy policy and then give the patients like a synopsis of what the policy contains. For example, you want to explain to patient that they have the right to request their medical records whenever they like. They also have the right to request you to amend their medical records whenever appropriate. They have the right to limit who has access to their personal information. Like they can literally put on file only patient or only so-and-so can have access to their information. They also have a right to choose how healthcare providers communicate with them. Like whether they want to communicate via text message or via email or just by phone calls. Then they also have the right to complain about the unauthorized disclosure of their personal information. Well, the bottom line is when working as a pharmacy technician, you must, and I emphasize that you must at all times comply with the HIPAA privacy rule. Just ensure the confidentiality and integrity of all PHI, whether it's in a physical form or electronic form. Like if it's in an electronic form, do not leave your computers open in public area. Do not talk about patient information in public places. Like, people like to gossip about patients in elevators, break rooms, or restrooms. That's not ethical. Do not do that. Also, detect and safeguard against any anticipated threats to the security of your electronic system, which has patients' protected information. And also, I would say rely on professional ethics and best judgments when considering requests for the protected health information. Like when you're in doubt that, you're not sure whether to release the information or whether to request the patient protected information or not, just double check with the pharmacist. And as a general rule in pharmacy, you always want to double check. And remember, in pharmacy, you as pharmacy techs working with pharmacists and other employees are a team to ensure the patient safety at all times, because for us, patient safety is everything. I hope the Pharmacy Tech Study Guide videos are helping you to grasp the knowledge that you need to learn to pass your PTCB exam, and this video also helped you to understand the HIPAA policies. If you have any questions or lecture suggestions, feel free to write them in the comments. I love to see your comments. You can also email me, and I'll see you next time with another lecture on Pharmacy Tech Study Guide. Until then, take care. Bye. Hey guys, if you found value in this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends and family, and remember to subscribe to stay up to date on new weekly videos.